So the students are not present on Zoom.
No,
Okay.
because there is a disturbance. That's why
Uh,
we asked them to join. Seema madam, I hope you are recording. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and a hearty welcome to you all. A very happy new year also. And today, we have an expert in English with us, and Mahila Mahavidyalay, Rajkumar Keval Ramani Mahavidyalay, R.S. Munle Dharampet Arts and Commerce College, and Board of Studies in English welcome you all to this BA Semester 1 online series, which we are doing for the English literature. Yes, and today we have a poet, a writer, a playwright who needs no introduction. Yes, Dr. Supan Bhattacharya. But it is a formality and I have to introduce him. And Dr. Supan Bhattacharya is an MA, MPhil, MBA, MFA, and a PhD. He is an associate professor and director at Hislop College, Nagpur. He is also a PhD supervisor. He was 24th merit in his SSC exam. He was a gold medalist in the MA examination. He was the university topper at the MPhil examination. He has been invited as resource person at many conferences and he has chaired many sessions. He has published many research articles in reputed journals. He is a theatre person. He has acted in over 150 plays in English, Hindi, Bangla, and Marathi. He is a quizzer. He has participated in Bonvita quiz, school quiz, and BBC Mastermind Open Quiz. He is a quiz master. He has conducted 5 national inter-university quizzes, numerous inter-college, inter-school, inter-institutional quizzes. He is a poet. He edits Poetry Journal, Rhythmics, and has won All India Poetry Prize conducted by British Council and Poetry Society of India. He has published poems in many anthologies. And friends, he is also the cricket umpire and in the state panel of BSA. So yes, we have this extraordinary personality amidst us here today, and we are fortunate to study Merchant of Venice from him. So over to Dr. Supan Bhattacharya.
Hello friends, good afternoon. Wish you all a very happy, prosperous and a safe and secure 2021. Thank you Manjushri for all your kind words, though some were a little exaggerated I feel. And but then, yeah, what's a little bit of kindness amongst old friends? Manjushri and I go way back, right up to our university days. So thank you once again for inviting me to this course. So friends, today we are going to look at a masterpiece of English literature and definitely a masterpiece of world drama. All right. And this play is The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. I'm sure all of you know about William Shakespeare. He was, of course, he is considered to be the greatest writer in any language who has ever lived, and unquestionably the greatest playwright ever. William Shakespeare was born in 1564 and he died in 1616. He actually died on his birthday, 23rd April. Uh, William Shakespeare wrote at a time which is today defined as Tudor drama, or to be more precise, Elizabethan drama. Elizabethan because most of his plays were written in the time of one of the greatest monarchs of British history, that is Queen Elizabeth the First. Okay, and Elizabeth was a great patron of all the arts, especially drama. She herself visited quite a few playhouses and watched live performances. She would invite theatre companies to her court and they would give a kind of a command performance. And it is believed that Elizabeth was so fond of a character created by Shakespeare. The character's name is Sir John Falstaff, and Elizabeth became so fond of this character that she had requested Shakespeare to write a play with Sir John Falstaff as the hero. And as a result, Shakespeare wrote the play The Merry Wives of Windsor, a very funny comedy. So basically, William Shakespeare wrote 37 plays. There are two or three plays which are considered only partly uh, today they are included in the Shakespearean canon, but not considered you know actual or definitive Shakespearean drama. So, if you study the plays of Shakespeare, you'll realize that there are three broad categories, all right, three broad modes he wrote in. He wrote a lot of comedies, around 16 to 17 comedies, all right. He wrote quite a few tragedies, and some are called histories, all right. So, these are the three categories of Shakespearean drama: comedies, tragedies, and history plays. And then he wrote a play called The Merchant of Venice. This is a play which is mm, kind of none of the above. All right. Not a comedy, not a tragedy, not a history. And this is a play which is all of the above. It is part comedy, part tragedy, part history. Now, if The Merchant of Venice is a comedy, it is a pitch black, deeply problematic comedy. If it's a tragedy, it's still, the conclusion is happy. Most of the characters, they arrive at a very happy fate. And if it's history, then definitely it is one of the better known and better liked history plays ever. Officially, though, The Merchant of Venice is a comedy. And it is a comedy about a very bitter and absolutely detested, hated Jewish moneylender whose name is Shylock. And Shylock in this play seeks revenge against a Christian merchant, Antonio, who has defaulted on a loan. Now, the controversial subject matter of Merchant of Venice has earned it a reputation as a problem play. All right. And this is a problem play which continues to ask a series of difficult questions, even, you know, almost 400, 500 years after it was first staged. Now, some of these questions are: number one, does the play support, does the play endorse the anti Jewish attitudes? The technical term is anti Semitic. So, does the play support the anti Semitic attitudes of all its Christian characters? Second question: does The Merchant of Venice, the play, does the play critique the kind of prejudices that it portrays on stage? Is it taking a critical stance? Third question: does the play, instead of the other two questions, does the play merely dramatize intolerance? It's not taking a stance one way or the other. It's neither supporting the anti Jewish sentiments nor is it condemning it. So, what is the play doing? Now, before we can begin to address these questions, it is important that we know some historical background. Okay, so please uh, fasten your seat belts. This is going to be a a bumpy history lesson. For Shakespeare, writing to an English audience about a Jewish moneylender would have been a little alien, would have been a little strange. That is because when Shakespeare wrote this play, uh, there were not too many Jews, all right, in 16th century England, because a parliamentary law which was passed in 1290, it was called the Edict of Expulsion. So that law kicked out all the Jews out of England. And the handful of Jews who were left, they had to practice their religion in absolute secrecy. Still, around this time, when Shakespeare wrote the play, around 1597, towards the close of the 16th century, around 1597, Jews were a very popular target of hatred in Shakespeare's England. And this was because Queen Elizabeth, she had a personal physician whose name was Rodrigo Lopez. All right, he was a converted Portuguese Jew. And around 1594, Elizabeth suddenly fell sick. And then, there were all kinds of conspiracy theories floating around. And in 1594, Lopez, her doctor, her personal physician, he was convicted of plotting to slow poison Queen Elizabeth I. And therefore, he was executed as a traitor. And it was a horrible punishment. All right. He was hanged, cut down when he was still alive, and mutilated and tortured before a crowd of spectators. So, those were times extremely brutal and barbaric. All right. Europe was just emerging out of the Middle Ages. So, execution was quite often a public spectacle. Shakespeare always had his pulse on the popular taste, on popular interest. So he realized that this anti Jewish sentiment is very high amongst the public. And therefore, he wrote and presented The Merchant of Venice around 1597. Strike while the iron is hot. However, what is interesting about Shakespeare's Jewish merchant, Shylock, is, I mean, it of course it depends on how you interpret the story, how you read the story. Is that he's not really a caricature of all things evil. He's not a complete villain, out and out villain. Yes, Shylock is very deeply flawed, but he's also a very complex character and is deeply human. If you remember, if you have read the text, Act 3, Scene 1, he asks the question, if you prick us, do we not bleed? Here, that speech, the entire speech, hath not a Jew eyes. Okay, he insists on the fact that Jews and Christians share a common humanity, despite the fact that Shylock has been kicked upon, he has been spat upon, and he has been abused and humiliated for being different, for being the other. And I'm sure all minorities, religious minorities, gender minorities, language minorities, caste minorities, color minorities, we can all identify with Shylock's sentiment or the Shylock speech. Just because I am different from you doesn't mean that I have to be treated in such an inhuman fashion as Antonio treats Shylock. So, is this an uproarious comedy yet? Or do you feel that it is closer to a tragedy? And given that the amount of history that you need to know in order to get the sense of the Merchant of Venice, maybe we should call this a history play. So now you see why critics are so confused about how to label this play.
whether to call it a comedy, a tragedy, or a history. It's none of these, it's all of these. The point is, this is a play which defies categorization. All right. So I like to think that maybe this is Shakespeare telling us that plays and human beings cannot be categorized on the basis of a few elements like color, like race, like religion, like gender, like language. All right. On the basis of these elements alone, you cannot really categorize people or call them the other. Now, what is the Merchant of Venice all about? And today, 500 years after, 1597, and this is 2021 already. So many years, so many centuries down the line, why should you care? Why should you bother? Now, let me give you an example. When you are very young, you imagine you make a deal with your younger brother that if the Royal Challengers Bangalore ever wins the IPL, your brother will have to put his finger inside a light socket. Just imagine. Royal Challengers Bangalore, they have never won the IPL. All right. So you make a bet with your brother, make a deal that if they ever win the IPL, he's going to put his finger inside the socket. And he's okay with the deal because, hey, RCB will never win the IPL. And you are also okay with the potentially devastating results because your younger brother once put Fevikwik in your shoes and he's a pest. And now the unthinkable happens. And before you know it, RCB has won the IPL. And now your brother is facing a life threat. He has to put his finger inside the light socket. Now, your younger brother, insists that you don't go ahead with the deal because it's the merciful thing to do. All right, you don't want to endanger his life, and so you cancel the deal. All right, you tell him, okay, fine, the deal is off. But you counter that the two of you had a bargain, the two of you had entered a contract, and a deal is a deal, and you want a seven-letter word. You want justice. Justice. Now, this analogy is in a way very pertinent, very relevant, very parallel to what is happening in Merchant of Venice. It's a very interesting word, justice. What does it mean exactly? Justice according to the law. Now, if imagine there was a law saying that white men were allowed to own black men, or suppose there is a law saying that just because a man is a woman's husband, he is allowed to beat his wife, and his wife is not allowed to vote. Surprised? Please don't be, because there are actually such laws in many nations. Okay? So, is justice something that is prescribed by the law? Okay, maybe not so much. Justice is obviously tied to something other than the law. Perhaps it's based in religion. Are we talking about divine law? Law as prescribed by God? Because we know religion has never led to anything bad. Has it? Yeah, I'm sure most of you will agree. Many of our conflicts, all right, many of the violence that we have seen in history and that we continue to see today has arisen because of religion. So, when we think about justice, there's obviously something else going on in our brains, in our heads. Something like ethics, something like morality, maybe. But what do you do when the justice according to the law is not the same as justice according to religion? which is not the same as justice according to morals or human decency. The point I'm trying to make, friends, is justice is not a term you can just throw around like feviquick or light socket. And yet, justice has been used to justify a number of actions, like cutting a pound of flesh from close to a man's heart. So, is this then the latest action and violence packed Bollywood blockbuster? No, friends. This is Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, a play that will make you shift and wriggle in discomfort, even while you are laughing. It's a very difficult play because you can realize that this is a comedy, but it's very uncomfortable laughter. This play is making you search your soul, is making you ask deep questions of yourself. You are, even while you are feeling very warm and fuzzy about what is happening on stage, you are contemplating the evilness of man. And of course, you are supporting one of the fiercest heroines in all drama, Portia. You're supporting her. But you are again very uneasy when she declares the punishments on Shylock. And finally, because this is a play by William Shakespeare, you are gasping in amazement at the language magic, at the sheer wit and the poetry of this masterful play. So, what happens in Merchant of Venice? When the play opens, it opens on a street of Venice. Now, in Venice there are not just canals and gondolas, there are also streets. Okay, and on the street, Antonio, who's a very well reputed, well established, a very popular merchant, all right, in Venice, he complains of a certain melancholy, of a certain sadness, which he can't quite explain. And his friends suggest that maybe he's sad because many of his merchandise, many of his cargoes, all right, they have been sent out on naval ventures. Ships have carried a lot of his merchandise and cargoes for commercial purpose. Now, all his money, all his investment is tied up in various sea ventures. But Antonio is quite definite that no, it's not money which is bothering him. And at this point, Bassanio enters the scene, right? And we learn that Bassanio had been at the forefront of Antonio's mind. Bassanio apparently has just returned from a secret trip, all right, to a town called secret trip from a town called Belmont, and there he had gone to meet an heiress, uh, a lady who has inherited a lot of property from her father. Right? So he has gone to Belmont to meet this heiress called Portia. And of course, Bassanio doesn't have too many resources, and he financed his trip. In fact, his entire lifestyle was financed by borrowing tons of money from Antonio, his very good friend. Portia is beautiful, Portia is very intelligent, and most importantly, she is very, very rich. Now, Bassanio tells Antonio that if he could somehow, if Antonio could somehow sponsor him for a return trip to Belmont, then Antonio is very certain that he will be able to compete with the other suitors, all right, and gain Portia's hand in marriage, in matrimony. And if they marry, if Portia agrees to marry Bassanio, then he is settled. Financially, he's settled for life. And Antonio says he would be very happy to lend Bassanio the money, all right, to woo Portia. Except the problem is all his money, all his finances are tied up by his sea ventures, by his business expeditions. Now, the two friends they part, agreeing that they'll try to raise the funds on Antonio's credit. Antonio has a very high reputation in the town, so they'll try to borrow money on Antonio's credit. Now, meanwhile, even rich heiresses have their own problems. Okay, from all the four corners of the world, people are queuing up to marry Portia. But problem is, although she is rich, although she is beautiful, although she is a woman of substance, she is not allowed to choose the man she wants. Okay, patriarchy, you know, male bastion. Patriarchy has laid down the law here. Her father, before he died, has uh, designed a very unusual test for her. Three boxes, three caskets, one golden, one silver, and one lead, are laid out before each suitor, and whoever picks the right one. How do you know which is the right one? The correct casket will have Portia's portrait in it. So whoever picks the right casket gets the girl. All right? It sounds a bit like a fairy tale. And Portia keeps complaining about all these, the County Palatine and the Scottish Lord and the British Lord and the the German aristocrat, all of whom are coming, as if she's not, as if there's something wrong with each of them. So while Portia is trying to figure out how to avoid marrying these unwelcome suitors, Bassanio is trying to figure out how to go to Belmont in order to marry Portia. So finally, Antonio and Bassanio negotiate with a Jewish moneylender, Shylock, and the sum he asks for is 3,000 ducats. All right. A ducat is an Italian coin, so called because it was minted by the Duke. All right, the Duke of Venice, and therefore from Duke you get the term ducat. So Bassanio borrows the money on his friend Antonio's credit. Now the trouble is, Antonio is strongly prejudiced against the Jews. Now, if you know, there are two reasons why Christians used to hate Jews back then. The reason behind what is called anti-Semitism. Okay, the first reason is the Jews were considered to be the killers of Christ. All right, all those rabbis in Jerusalem, they conspired together and they had ensured that Pontius Pilate passed the sentence of crucifixion on Christ. So that is the first reason why they hated Jews. Jews are killers of Christ. Second reason is the Jews were very wealthy, and the Jews lent money and charged interest for it, which is a sin according to Christian doctrine. All right, it's the sin of usury. Usury. Usury means you can lend money to people, but then you can't charge interest for it. The Jews did not believe in this. They lent money, they charged interest, and they grew rich. So, this financial stronghold which the Jews had on most European economies, that was the second reason why Christians loved to hate the Jews. So now Shylock somehow thinks that this is an opportunity to extract revenge on Antonio. So Shylock says he will lend the money to Antonio interest free. But there is one condition. Antonio will have to sign a bond promising that if this debt, if this loan goes unpaid, then Antonio will give Shylock a pound of his own flesh. Now, at the time, it seems like a good idea because Antonio is sure that his ships are going to return pretty soon, and he would have earned the money before Shylock's due date. All right, 3 months, and as I told you, It's like entering into a kind of a bargain with your brother that if RCB ever wins the IPL, he will put his finger in the socket, in the plug socket. Now, before you can analyze what a crazy idea this is, that what has money got to do with a pound of flesh? Okay, the bond is signed. Antonio is so confident that his ships shall come home that without thinking twice, immediately signs this stupid bond. Now, in Belmont, the rules of the casket game are revealed. All right. If you choose wrong, then not only do you fail to get Portia, but you have to remain a bachelor for the rest of your life. And in the play, six suitors are mentioned, but then we see two. All right, the Prince of Morocco and the Prince of Aragon. All right, they come, they make the wrong choice. One chooses gold, one chooses silver. Both of them fail. Meanwhile, in back in Venice, we meet Shylock's daughter, Shylock's only daughter, only child, Jessica, and she informs us that life in Shylock's home is pure hell, and she's ashamed to be Shylock's daughter. And now she has fallen in love with a Christian youth whose name is Lorenzo, and she decides to elope with Lorenzo and convert to Christianity. And with the help of Shylock's servant, Lancelot Gobbo, she gets the chance to carry out her rebellious plan, rebellious scheme. And when her dad goes out, leaves the house to go to dinner, okay, at Bassanio's, with Lancelot's help, Jessica steals off with her lover, Lorenzo, and helps herself to a huge chunk of dad's cash, dad's wealth. All right, money, jewelry, gemstones, you name it. She takes her own dowry with her. So now Bassanio has got the money from Shylock, and Bassanio and his friend Graciano and some of his other friends, they set off for Belmont, hoping that Bassanio will be able to pass the test and snag the beautiful and rich Portia. Now, some gossip mongers in Venice reveal that when Shylock learns that his daughter has eloped, his daughter has run away, he absolutely lost his senses. He was mad with rage, and he ran up and down the streets of Venice, crying, "My daughter! Oh, my ducats! Oh, my daughter! Fled with a Christian! Oh, my Christian ducats!" This is Act 2, Scene 8. Look at the priorities here. All right, he's more angry about the fact that his gold is gone than he's about the fact that his daughter is has eloped. So this is good news for Antonio, who actually hates Shylock. But unfortunately, all right, what happens is Antonio doesn't realize that his ships are not going to come home in a hurry, and they eventually, via the conversation of some other Venetians, we learn that Antonio's ships have been sinking left, right, and center. Almost all his ships have been wrecked, and so he has suffered a huge financial loss. So Shylock shows up. He's still absolutely mad. He's totally furious about his daughter's rebellion, but now he's very excited because he has finally learned that he will be able to get that pound of flesh from his mortal enemy, Antonio. And he explains to these men who are gossiping on the streets, Celarino, Solenio, and others, that he hates Antonio because Antonio hates him for being Jewish. That wonderful speech in defense of the humanity of Jews. I told you, if you prick us, do we not bleed? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you harm us, shall we not revenge? Act 3, Scene 1. And then Shylock's conclusion is that a Jew is very similar to a Christian. In a similar situation, what would a Christian do? He would seek revenge. And therefore, Shylock will also do the same because this is what he has learned from the Christians. The Christians have taught him hatred with their cruelty. Now, Shylock is also further angered to learn that his daughter has been honeymooning all over Europe and lavishly spending all his money. So he sets up arrangements. He informs the sheriff, okay, and Antonio is jailed, and eventually he awaits a trial. Now in Belmont, Portia has somehow evaded all the other suitors, but she is truly excited by Bassanio because Bassanio is extremely handsome and very charming. And Bassanio, of course, I mean, this is a fairy tale. So Prince Charming must always make the right choice. So Bassanio chooses the lead casket and wins Portia and her wealth. And Portia is absolutely, there's a brilliant scene after the selection where Portia declares herself to be entirely at Bassanio's disposal. But at this point, Lorenzo and Jessica arrive with the news that Antonio is facing execution. All right, he's about to die at Shylock's command. And Portia offers to pay off Antonio's debt. It's just like a tiny sum for her. And she and Bassanio, they have a quick marriage. And she sends Bassanio back to Venice with 20 times the money which Antonio had borrowed. That is 3,000 ducats into 20, 60,000 ducats. And before departure, before Bassanio departs, Portia gives Bassanio a ring and makes him promise that he will never take it off. All right. And those of us who know Shakespearean drama, we know that this ring is going to cause a lot of problems for Bassanio later on. All right. And Bassanio's good friend, Gratiano, also marries Portia's maid in waiting, Nerissa. So it's a double wedding. All right. And Nerissa also gives a ring to Gratiano. Meanwhile, as after the men leave, Portia, she doesn't have too much confidence in Bassanio's intelligence. Okay. And what she decides is to cross dress. Now she's going to disguise herself as a male and pose as a lawyer to argue in Antonio's defense at the trial. Now she tells Lorenzo, she makes Lorenzo the temporary caretaker of a house and disguises herself and Nerissa as men. Okay, and sets off for Venice. And now comes the very, very important trial scene. Okay, now we have moved to the Duke's court. The Duke is presiding over the trial, and everybody tries to plead with Shylock. But Shylock won't listen to reason. He wants justice and justice alone. And what does justice mean to Shylock? Having a pound of Antonio's flesh. And things seem absolutely hopeless for Antonio. But at this point of time, a very young, uh, effeminate looking man turns up who happens to be a very learned lawyer. All right. And his name is Balthazar. But, there's a bit of dramatic irony here. The audience knows this is not Balthazar. As you all know, that in Shakespeare's comedies, the heroines will always dress up as men and control the action. Viola dresses up as a male in Twelfth Night. All right. Rosalind disguises herself as Ganymede the shepherd in As You Like It. And this is what Portia does here. She cross dresses as Balthazar. And then Portia begins the argument. Then she tells Shylock that Shylock should have mercy on Antonio. And this is again a wonderful speech, the quality of mercy speech, where she says that whenever we show mercy on others, we come very close to God because God is always merciful. God always forgives us and shows compassion on us in spite of our many sins. And thereby, when we display these qualities, we become godlike, we become divine. Shylock is not interested in mercy. All right. He says, I'm okay with only justice. Thank you very much. All right. I don't want all these sermons, all these moral lessons on mercy. All right. Justice is good enough for me. And he keeps on repeating, this is the bond, all right, the contract on which Antonio has signed away a pound of his flesh. And the Duke can't bend the rules because it will set up a very bad precedent. All right. other investors in Venice, they would realize that Venice does not follow its laws. So it will set up a very bad example. So the Duke says, I'm helpless. All right. And Antonio also is totally careless. I mean, he is not bothered if he dies because his best friend, Bassanio, has got married to Portia. And he knows that now Bassanio will no longer be as friendly with him. All right. There are other elements in this which we won't go into at this point. Right. And Bassanio says he wishes he could trade his wife and his life for Antonio's. And this does not please the disguised Portia. But she doesn't say anything here. Now, as Shylock is sharpening his knife, all right, preparing to stab Antonio at the heart and cut out a pound of flesh, just as he's about to do that, Portia halts Shylock. And there's the dramatic twist, kahani mein twist, as they say. Okay, he, I'm sorry, she, Portia, shows Shylock the bond and tells him that this bond entitles you to a pound of flesh, but no blood. If you spill a single drop of Christian blood, you'll be guilty of plotting to murder a Venetian Christian, and the penalty for that is death and confiscation of property. Shylock is taken aback. All right, he says, how is it possible? You can't cut even a gram of flesh without shedding blood. He himself had said, if you prick us, do we not bleed? And now you're asking me to cut out 1 pound of flesh without shedding a drop of blood? Then he grumbles, he mutters, he relents, and then he says, fine, just give me the 3 times the debt cash you offered me earlier. Portia says, sorry, that offer is not on the table anymore. You yourself in open court have repudiated that offer. Then he says, okay, give me my investment back, my principal, 3,000 ducats. And Portia says, that is not on the table either. That is no longer part of the offer because you yourself, in the Duke's presence, you have refused that. And Shylock's absolute humiliation and misery continues. And finally, he declares that he is going to leave the court. Portia stops him and informs him that this was a conspiracy to kill a Venetian and you have to forfeit everything he owns and beg for your life. So now Antonio has the upper hand. And what does he decide as punishment? Shylock now has to sign an agreement saying that when he dies, all his money will go to Jessica and her new Christian husband. Also, Shylock must lose his religion. Shylock now must convert to Christianity. End of the scene, Shylock goes out a completely broken, devastated, shattered old man. Now, Portia grabs Nerissa and tries to get back to Belmont before, Bassanio and Graciano return and find out that their wives are not present. Now, Antonio and Bassanio, they corner the lawyer Balthazar and they literally plead with her. They coax her to accept some kind of a fee, all right, accept some kind of a gift. And although Portia disguised as Balthazar, repeatedly tries to refuse this, all right, but the men insist. Then she asks for Bassanio's ring, which is actually her own ring, the ring which she had given Bassanio. All right, but this ring symbolizes marital trust. All right, this ring symbol, she had told Bassanio that you should never take this ring off. And then she wants to test Bassanio to see how deep his, his faith is, how deeply can he be trusted. And Bassanio initially refuses to give her the ring. But then, on Antonio's request, he hands it over to her, and the disguised Nerissa also gets the ring from Graciano. In the final act, in the fifth act, everybody gets home to Belmont. See, when the play ends, if Shakespeare had ended the play at the end of Act 4, it would not really have been a comedy. It would have, the yes, Antonio escapes with his life. Everything is pretty happy, and all is well. But somehow it would have left a very foul taste in your mouth. It would not have been a proper comedy. So what happens is Shakespeare added this fifth act almost as an afterthought. Now everybody is home in Belmont, and the women have arrived just before the men. And Nerissa begins a mock fight with Graziano about missing the ring, and she accuses Graziano of giving it to a woman. And then Portia tells Nerissa that no, my husband would never have given his ring away. Okay, and Graziano is mighty relieved. He says, "Oh, but it was he who showed me the way. Even he has given his ring away." And then Portia starts fighting with Bassanio. Okay, she complains that you men always break your faith, and now I'll go to bed not with you but with this learned scholar. All right, I'll also break my marriage vows like you broke yours by giving the ring. Now Antonio has come to Belmont with the men, and he feels very responsible for these fights because it was on his request that Bassanio had given away the ring to Balthazar. So to make up for it, he promises his soul as a guarantee that Bassanio will be faithful to Portia in future. She ought to just forgive him this once. Portia accepts this offer of Antonio's soul, and she gives him a ring to give to Bassanio. That, okay, this is a replacement ring, and tell your friend to wear this. Bassanio takes one look at the ring and discovers that it's the original ring. And now Portia explains everything, that it was she who was the young lawyer and Nerissa who was the lawyer's clerk. And the two of them had rescued Antonio from Shylock's clutches. And she has got a letter which says that quite a few of Antonio's ships have come home with their profits. And the play ends with happiness for most of the characters in the play. Except, of course, as the play ends, we still remember Shylock's plight. So this is not pure, undiluted comedy. That this is why this play has been called a problem play. Yes, the play ends in a very positive, in a very upbeat and feel good kind of a way. But there is some kind of an irritation in your subconscious somewhere, and you feel that no, I mean, yes, justice has been done, but what about Shylock? Has he been treated fairly, or has he been persecuted just because he belongs to a religious minority? Now, I'll there's not much time left. I'll quickly run through some of the important themes in the play. Okay, the first theme is race. In Merchant of Venice, Judaism and Christianity in Venice are not really religions. They are more like racial identities, racial or even national identities. All right, there's a portrayal of this very bloodthirsty, cruel Jewish moneylender, and this is a stereotype. All right, it's a racial stereotype. The Jews are always portrayed as modern audiences. We find this very uncomfortable. We know not all Jews are like this. Just as there are such individuals in the Jewish race, there are others in the Christians, there are others amongst all other races. Okay, so modern audiences feel very uncomfortable with this portrayal of Shylock. And literary critics, they are deeply divided over the question of whether or not the play itself endorses racism. Okay, so maybe you ought to, after reading the play, you could ask yourself, does the play endorse anti-Semitism? Is Shylock a character we should sympathize with, or is Shylock a character we should hate? All right. See, Portia does not like the Prince of Morocco because of her skin color, because of his skin color. So isn't she also a kind of a racist? Why does Jessica run away from her father's home? All these questions on the question of race you can ask yourself. And Shakespeare, in that one famous speech, I think he criticizes intolerance. I think he criticizes bigotry. Okay, not directly, But in that one speech, you can feel that Shakespeare's heart is definitely bleeding for the underdog. He does not want to us to see Shylock as an utter villain, as an out and out villain. All right, it is just the play is just showing you what the prevalent attitude, the attitude of the 16th century Londoners was towards the Jewish question. All right, Shakespeare just is neither condoning it nor condemning it. He's just showing you as it is. The next theme which Shakespeare deals with in this play is money, wealth. The title itself, Merchant of Venice. Okay, so commerce, finances, all right, all these are important issues. It's a very big issue in the play. And at times, critics ask the question, who is the Merchant of Venice? Does the title refer to Antonio? But then Shylock is also a merchant. So did Shakespeare deliberately want to maintain a kind of ambiguity, suggesting that it is Shylock who's the real protagonist of the play, the real hero of the play? In much of the play, the attitudes of these characters towards wealth, all right, money lending and trade and business, they serve these attitudes, they serve as a way to differentiate between Christians and Jews. In the play, the Christians are portrayed as generous, even careless with their fortunes, and Jews are shown as money grubbing, greedy, and caring more for their ducats than human relationships. All right. As well as if you read between the lines, if you read the subtext, there's also the suggestion that Shakespeare is questioning these stereotypes. He's portraying those stereotypes on the stage, but he's also questioning them. He's asking his audience, are these justified? So again, you can ask yourself these questions. Is Bassanio using Antonio? Is Bassanio trying to marry Portia for love or for her inheritance? How is Shylock's attitude towards money different from the attitudes of the Christian characters? Another very important theme is the theme of friendship. In Act 1, Scene 1, Bassanio says, to you, Antonio, I owe the most in money and in love. Okay, he's preparing to court his wife. And the dynamics of male friendship, the bond, male bonding, all right, it's valued above all other relationships, especially romance and marriage. Antonio loves Bassanio so much that he's willing to lay down his life and a very painful, a horrible death that he's ready to face for Bassanio's sake. Okay, and critics have suggested that Antonio's deep misery, his deep melancholy, all right, is because of this, that Bassanio is now no longer going to be, as easily available as he was earlier. Now he would be a husband, and so his the session is that Antonio's affection for Bassanio is probably a little romantic in nature. All right, there's a thing called homoeroticism, all right, which is involved here. But again, let us keep that aside for the moment. You can call it, what's the popular term you guys are very fond of? Antonio and Bassanio share a kind of bromance. All right. So if it's romance for Bassanio and Portia, it is bromance between Antonio and Bassanio. So again, these are questions you can ask yourself. Is Bassanio a good friend to Antonio, or is he just using Antonio? What is Portia's take? What is Portia's understanding of the relationship between Antonio and Bassanio? Does Portia resent Antonio? Does she genuinely want to help Antonio, or is helping Antonio serving some deeper purpose for Portia? Is she somehow able to establish? Is she somehow able to gain Bassanio's trust? by helping Antonio? All right. So again, these are questions that irritate you. Why does Antonio insist that Bassanio give up Portia's ring? Okay, it is Bassanio initially is reluctant, but Antonio insists that the ring be given away. Then marriage, all right, is another very important issue in the play. Now, these days, we associate marriage with romantic love. But in Shakespeare's time, that was not necessarily the case. All right. Marriage was more a matter of convenience. All right. It was often the dowry that was more important than the daughter. Right. And again, there are multiple marriages in the play. Um, uh, Bassanio getting married to Portia, Graciano getting married to Nerissa, Lorenzo marrying Jessica. Okay, so although at the end of the play, by the fifth act, marriage becomes the most important relationship. But then throughout the play, we find there's a kind of a conflict. All right, Bassanio wants to get married to Portia, because of which his relationship with Antonio is endangered. So it is friendship versus marriage, which is more important, friendship between two males or the marital bond between a husband and a wife. Again, Shakespeare is toying with these questions. Is marriage a result of love, or is marriage more a matter of necessity and convenience? Why does Bassanio want to marry Portia? Why is Portia so fond of Bassanio? All right, is it merely attraction? Is it mere infatuation? All right, do the women take fidelity seriously? Okay, and what is marital faith? What is marital trust? What is their future going to be after marriage? Are they going to play around? Okay, so all these questions niggle in your mind once the play comes to an end. And even the men and women, the characters, they are very realistic. They know that once you get married, there is no romance left in it. Okay, it's not a necessary requirement of marriage, but financial dependence on each other is definitely an important element of all marriages. This is what the play seems to be saying. Then we have already discussed the next theme, that is justice. Okay, the economic stability of Venice depends on foreign investors, foreign businessmen like Shylock, and all these laws, they are in place to protect the legal rights of these foreign investors. So when Shylock goes to the court and demands a pound of flesh of Antonio, okay, he is expected to show mercy, and when he insists on being paid, the law is helpless. So Shakespeare is also questioning this issue of this element, this idea of justice. Who decides what is just and what is unjust? Is it the law of the land? Who creates the law? The majority? God? Okay, so this whole idea of justice, if you read the dialogues of Socrates by Plato, you will find that Socrates often keeps asking this question. All right, where what we call social justice. What is the provenance? What is the origin? All right, what may be just for you? A law which is passed in the parliament and sanctioned by the president, the majority may find it just, but there may be others for whom it's very unjust. So, how do we arrive at a kind of a common mean? Shylock being forced to convert to Christianity, being forced to give up his religion. What kind of a justice is this? Is this supposed to be the Christian act of mercy? Portia keeps talking about, talking to her, telling Shylock about the qualities of mercy. But then, while dealing with Shylock, does she display the same mercy to Shylock? Are there different rules for different people? All right, these are again very heavy weighing questions in your conscience. The next theme is love. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of love between family members, friends, and between lovers. But in this play, every time I read the play, I find that maybe Shakespeare is laughing at this idea of romantic love. Love is notable for its absence rather than its presence. Okay, and in this play, love goes hand in hand with betrayal. Jessica loves Lorenzo, so she betrays her love for her father. All right, Bassanio says he loves Portia, and then he courts her for her money and abandons Antonio, leaves Antonio to his fate. The women seem happy to give love, but there is a bit of cynicism. All right, they know that men are going to be flirts, men are going to play the field, okay, and marital trust is not something the women, Jessica and sorry, not Jessica, Nerissa and Portia are not too confident about. So love is probably subordinated to practical concerns in this play. Love is regulated, love is sacrificed, love is betrayed. And the whole idea of romantic love is based on very rocky foundations in this play. Next issue would be isolation. Okay, many of these characters they come from estranged and marginalized groups. Shylock is also isolated because he is Jewish. All right, his religious beliefs and his cultural values they are at odds with his fellow Christian Venetians. Antonio is isolated because of his melancholy, because he's always very grief struck and very sad, and by his relationship with Bassanio. Okay, so we never really know what kind of relationship they are in. Portia is isolated because she's a woman. Although she's a woman who's very confident, she's a woman who's capable of reaching the skies, but her hands are tied because she's a daughter and she has to be governed by her father's will. She cannot marry whoever she wants, but whoever chooses the right casket. So again, you could do a bit of soul searching here. Do the characters choose isolation or is it thrust upon them? How does isolation function in the plays? All right. How does Antonio's relationship with Bassanio function in terms of isolation? Okay. Jessica, who is she? Is she a Christian? Is she a Jew? Or is she both? Is she isolated from her father? But now she's a Jew married to a Christian. Although she's converted to Christianity, would she really be ever considered a complete Christian? Is she comfortable with the decision she has taken? So we need to consider these. We need to ask these questions. And the last theme that I'd like to talk about today before we wind up is the question of choices. Okay. All the characters, most of the characters in the play, they have to choose choose between lovers, friends, family. They have to choose between personal comfort, societal norms. Okay, so all the time, they have to arrive at decisions. Some, of course, are explicit choices. All right, like Portia's casket test. All right, that provides the framework of the entire play. All right, which lets us know that choices are important. And there are more abstract choices. Antonio must choose. All right, he can easily say no to Bassanio, but then he puts his entire life at risk. Okay, and enables he can if Bassanio does not go to Belmont and marry Portia, then Antonio should be happy because then Bassanio will be his friend for life without ever getting possessed by Portia. But then he decides not to. All right, it's almost masochistic. He's almost inflicting pain on himself. All right, he pledges a pound of his flesh to Shylock, and with that money, he sends Bassanio away to marry Portia. So I think in life, the greatest choices are often about the way we treat each other as human beings. Shylock pursues his pound of Antonio's flesh because Antonio has treated him in an inhuman way. He has treated him like a dog. Okay. Antonio, in the end, he chooses to deprive Shylock of his livelihood and his religion. And finally, in the fifth act, Antonio chooses not to pursue his relationship with Bassanio. Okay, he now realizes, all of you may have read this. If you love a thing, let it go. If it comes back, it is yours. If it doesn't, it was never yours. So this is what Antonio does. He lets Bassanio go to Portia. And as the play ends, both these merchants of Venice, that is Shylock and Antonio, they are left all alone. Shylock returns to his home. He has lost his daughter. He has lost his religion. He has lost his assets. Antonio returns home. Yes, he has money. His ships have come home. But he has lost his most prized possession, his friendship with Bassanio. Because Bassanio, after marriage, now his priorities will be different. Now he'll have a family to look after. All right. And Portia, I feel she is such a dominant personality that she won't really allow Bassanio too much liberty. All right. So Bassanio would be under the thumb of Portia post marriage. Antonio is aware of this. So these are the two most isolated individuals at the end of the play. That's all for today. Thank you so much. I wish I could talk a lot more about this play, which is one of my favorite plays, and not just simply because I have myself played Shylock on the stage. And so Shylock is a character who's very close to my heart. And I hope some other time to discuss some other aspects of the play with you. But as for today, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supan. But before that, I would just like to show them the picture of Shylock.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a picture of Shylock with us. So
Yes,
let
yes.
me share my screen and show them this picture. And I have two pictures here. First, they can see this. Yes, is it visible?
Yeah, yeah. This is
Okay.
the that speech. Hath not a Jew eyes?
Yeah. And children, who's this person? Can you recognize? Who's this? Yes, this is Supan sir. Yes, you must have recognized
It
him.
is that I grew a beard, for about 3 months I didn't shave. So the beard
Oh,
is original.
oh, okay. Now the next one. Just wait. I'll just
The
stop
next one
sharing.
is
Yeah,
this is the
yeah.
trial
Just
scene.
yes. Just wait. Ah,
Yes, that's
yes,
the trial scene.
yes.
Okay,
The
you can
famous
see
trial
Shylock.
scene.
Yeah, the Shylock in the corner. The man in the purple dress, he's the Duke.
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, you can't see, but towards the right, you'll see Bassanio and Antonio.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah,
And sir, you made this session was really very interesting. I think everybody must have been glued to their mobiles and laptops. I was just listening to you. I know the story, but still it was you made it so interesting. I can listen to the story n
thank you.
number of times. Yes. And yes, you went through the themes, or you explained each and every character in detail. That I think the students must now be really they'll go home and read the I think original text, I think, which is
Yes, they
available.
should. They
Yeah.
should. Yes.
Yes, now you have increased their curiosity. Yeah, and the questions you put forth, they have really given food for thought, and they
Yeah.
will really think over all these questions. And it was really very interesting, and really I think the students are fortunate to have listened to you, and they have really enjoyed the session.
Thank you. I enjoyed
Thank
myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for
Thank you
accepting our
very much.
invitation. And yeah,
Thank you.
and thank you.
So kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good day, friends. All the
good.
best.
Yes,
Have a great year. Bye.
same to you.